Imagine a single decision tearing the planet apart. In today's countdown, we travel through 12 movies and series that not only trigger World War III, but dissect what is left when the radioactive dust settles. From the claustrophobic diner in Deterrence, through the ashes of Sheffield in Threads, to the silicon apocalypse of Terminator 3. These are stories of survival, sacrifice, and the question of whether anyone can win a war that ends everything. How I Live Now. The apocalypse doesn't always start with bombs. Sometimes it starts with a single order that can unleash a third world war. How I Live Now from 2013 is a poignant tale of teenage Daisy, who makes her way from New York to the English countryside to spend the summer with relatives. But the world suddenly changes. A disturbing political conflict in Europe escalates, and borders begin to burn. When war breaks out, everything descends into chaos. Daisy is cut off from her loved ones and forced to fight for survival. In a world gripped by uncertainty, fear, and brutality, love is born, but also the pain of growing up. The film shows that sometimes the hardest thing to survive is not the bomb, but the loss of normalcy itself. Threads. There are no heroes. There is no hope. There is only ash. Threads from 1984 is one of the most terrifying and realistic films about nuclear war in the history of cinema. The story is set in Sheffield, Britain, where ordinary people try to live normal lives until the conflict between East and West erupts. When the bombs fall, there is no heroic music or rescue from heaven. There is silence, devastation, and the slow death of civilization. The film shows not only the moment of the attack itself, but also the brutal, years-long aftermath: starvation, disease, the disintegration of society, and the collapse of humanity. Threads is not fiction. It is a warning. Realistic, raw, and mentally crushing cinema that stays in the mind forever. Sacred Games. One warning, one phone call, and the entire country stands on the brink of annihilation. Sacred Games from 2018 is a dark, multi-layered crime thriller from India that mixes the violent criminal world with the mystical prophecy of the end of the world. It all begins when cynical police officer Sartaj Singh receives a phone call from a long-lost gangster. The man tells him that in 25 days, the entire city will die. It's not just an investigation. It's a race against time that leads through political conspiracies, religious fanaticism, and secrets from years ago. Each lead uncovers another layer of lies and brutal truth. Sacred Games is a series about power, faith, and the thin line between salvation and destruction. Because sometimes what is sacred can be the most dangerous. Deterrence. What would you do if the fate of the world depended on a single decision? Deterrence is an intense 1999 political thriller that shows one of the most terrifying scenarios in human history. The action takes place in the near future. The President of the United States, trapped by a snowstorm in a small restaurant in Colorado, must make a decision that could start a third world war. With a conflict with Iraq looming, the president is considering the use of nuclear weapons. The camera never leaves the cramped interior of the diner, and the tension builds with every minute. The film poses difficult questions. Where does morality end and necessity begin? Can the threat of annihilation stop a war? Deterrence is intimate cinema, but with gigantic consequences. American Assassin. In an instant, he lost everything, and then he stopped being a victim. American Assassin from 2017 is the brutal story of the birth of a new CIA agent. Mitch Rapp was an ordinary boy until he saw his fiancée killed in a terrorist attack. From that moment on, he's driven by only one thing: revenge. He single-handedly tracks down terrorists until he ends up on the intelligence agency's radar. There, he undergoes merciless training under the guidance of a former commando. When a new threat emerges, a plan for a nuclear attack that could unleash a third world war, Rapp is sent to stop it. This is a cinema full of action, adrenaline, and anger that shows how far one can go when there is nothing left to lose. On the beach, imagine a world that has already ended, only it doesn't know it yet. On the Beach from 2000 is a poignant film about the last days of humanity after a nuclear war. A radioactive cloud is slowly approaching Australia, the last surviving place on Earth. At the center of the story is the American submarine USS Charleston, commanded by Captain Dwight Towers. Together with Australian officer Peter Holmes and an international crew, they embark on a mission to check a mysterious radio signal from San Diego. Is it a sign of life, or just an echo of the old world? In the midst of danger, a subtle relationship is born between Towers and a woman named Moira, and each day becomes a farewell to hope. This is a quiet apocalypse in which emotions are the loudest. The Book of Eli. The world is in ruins, and people have forgotten what goodness, hope, and faith are. The Book of Eli from 2010 is a powerful post-apocalyptic story about a lone wanderer who carries more than a weapon. He carries the word. Eli travels across a war-ravaged America, protecting the last copy of a sacred book. In a world where everyone is fighting for survival, this book could become a tool of rebirth or absolute power. Eli knows he must reach his destination, no matter how many people stand in his way. The film combines spectacular action with reflections on faith, meaning, and morality at a time when all seems lost. It is a story about the strength of spirit that does not go out even when the whole world is plunged into darkness. Fail safe. Can a catastrophe be reversed when one mistake sets off an irreversible chain of events? Fail Safe from 2000 is a gripping thriller about a nuclear nightmare that begins with a simple system failure. American bombers mistakenly receive orders to attack Moscow. The President of the United States, played by George Clooney, must face the unimaginable. How to stop his own military and prevent a third world war. The whole thing takes place in real time, in confined spaces, shelters, command centers, pilot cabins, which only adds to the claustrophobia and tension. It's a film about responsibility, the mistakes of technology, and the thin line between peace and annihilation. Left Behind the Third, World at War. When millions of people disappear, the world goes up in flames. But that's just the beginning. Left Behind, World at War from 2005 is the third part of the apocalyptic saga in which humanity is brought to its knees after the so-called rapture, the mysterious disappearance of believers. The Antichrist, hidden under the mask of a charismatic leader, takes control of the world. He introduces a new order, destroys resistance, and every word of the Bible begins to become reality. The President of the United States and a handful of surviving Christians try to stop the impending doom, but are faced with a choice: fight or succumb. The film is a mix of political thriller, religious vision, and post-apocalyptic atmosphere. This war is not about oil, power, or territory. There is a battle for souls here. The sum of all fears. What if the greatest threat comes not from enemies, but from disagreements between superpowers? The Sum of All Fears from 2002 is an intense political thriller based on Tom Clancy's novel. When a nuclear attack occurs in the US, the world stands on the brink of war. Suspicions fall on Russia, but the truth is much more frightening. Behind the attack is a mysterious group that wants to trigger a third world war, fueling fear and chaos between the superpowers. At the center of events is a young CIA analyst, Jack Ryan, who must uncover the truth before the world is engulfed in flames. It's a tale of a race against time, false leads, and the consequences of wrong assumptions. The film asks one question: are we ready for our own fears? Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. The future cannot be stopped. It can only be delayed. Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines from 2003 is a return to a dark vision of the world where artificial intelligence will take over the Earth. John Connor grows up in hiding, trying to forget his destiny. But Skynet hasn't forgotten. This time it sends a new model, the TX, a deadly effective machine in female form. Humanity is on the verge of collapse, and time for action is running out. The familiar Terminator returns to the fight, but even he may not be able to stop the inevitable. Terminator 3 is a film about the inevitability of annihilation, but also about the power of decision and the attempt to change fate. As machines grow stronger and humans become weaker than ever, the most important question is, do we still have a choice? Or are there wars that simply cannot be won? Equilibrium. There are no bombs, there is no shouting, there is no crying, there is only silence and obedience. In 2002's Equilibrium, humanity chose a sick solution after a devastating war: cut the emotions out of life. Everyone must take a drug that turns people into obedient shadows. John Preston, a man from the execution of those who feel, follows orders without blinking an eye. Until, once he skips a dose, everything changes. He feels the music, sees the beauty, and for the first time begins to understand what freedom is. The film is a mix of dystopia, philosophy, and furious action, where every smile can cost a life. It's a brutal reminder that true rebellion begins in the heart, not in the barrel of a gun. These were our cinematic visions of World War III, from the first shot to the faintest spark of hope. Let me know in the comments which titles hit you the hardest, or add your own picks that deserve a spot. If you enjoyed this stroll through the end of the world, smash that like button and subscribe. There are plenty more reality-shaking stories ahead. Thanks for watching, and until next time, hopefully before the end arrives.